This is Live with Mama Coco. My name is Cora Pantin, and this is Live with Mama Coco this evening, and we are blessed this evening to have a return guest. Yes, marvelous. Yes, our sister, young, vibrant, intelligent. Yes, Tashia, God's Grace Burris. Remember the name, God's Grace. He says that his grace is sufficient for us, and we are having God's grace. Tashia Burris. Miss Tashia Grace, God's Grace Burris.
Hi. Good night, Mama Coco. Good night. And good night to all your viewers. How are you?
Oh, well, I will say good night, and it's a pleasure to have you. I don't know, you know, in life, you just always want something. Well, I want to get you back on Mama Coco Live.
Nice.
Yes,
Well, I'm back.
Yes, you are back. When you last came, you had great hope and promise, and you went out there and you did a great job. When I say great job, I mean a great job. You went out there fiery with the message, with the plans, with the drive. And I want to thank Almighty God this evening for spared lives. I want to thank him in a special way for you, because you said something, you went after it, and by God's grace, I claim you as a winner. You know,
thank you.
You didn't lose. Tobago lost. Tobago lost. Yes.
Oh boy.
Tentative that we could have ever have. Yeah, or even had for Tobago West. Because remember, A&R was the best that ever went to Trinidad, but he did not represent Tobago West. He represents Tobago East. So now we have you here, and we are happy to have you, and blessed be the tide that binds our heart in Christian love today. In human love. In love for women, in love for children, in love for country, and in love for people in general, because your motto was people before
politics. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I must say, I mean, first off, out of the gate, I must thank everybody who supported me on my journey, starting from my family, my children, my parents, and everybody who pledged their support, everybody who voted on election day. I think one of the most surreal feelings I had was receiving pictures of people's voting fingers and people saying, look, I went to the voting booth and I stained my finger for you. And to me, that spoke volumes, because it meant that whatever I said to persons, and I didn't have a lot of time for people to get to know me. I didn't have a lot of time to campaign. There are a lot of forces that were working against me in this election. But whatever I did, whatever I said resonated so much that persons, there was a young man who even said that he never voted in his entire life because he never saw a candidate worthy of his vote. And he went out that day to vote for me. So that is just overwhelming. And you're right, there is no loss, there is no defeat, because there was victory from day one. The mere fact that people have gotten their voices again, I see that as a victory. The mere fact that Tobago now recognizes that it has not been getting what it deserves, that is a victory. The mere fact that even though they chose who they chose, that they have now said, we're going to hold you to what you said you're going to do, I see that as a victory. So there's no defeat. Trust me, there is victory all around. So I must say thank you to everybody who has called, messaged, sent words of support, who has prayed for me. There were a lot of persons who were praying for me. Trust me, I could never say thanks enough, you know, and it's just been a crazy, crazy ride.
There is a light behind your
to
head.
The back of me?
Yes.
This is better?
This is better, yes. Because it's
all right. Because I'm actually sitting on my couch. Yeah, I'm kind of short, so.
You are tall enough. You can, if you were taller and the kind of lioness that you have in you, what would have happened to the people?
Well, I don't know. I
Listen,
mean, oh boy, I don't know. It's funny because it is kind of hard for me to be disappointed at this stage in my life. So every experience that I've been privileged to go through, I look for the blessing and the lesson. And I've received so many blessings in this journey, and I've also received so many lessons in this journey that nobody could convince me that I lost anything. I didn't lose anything. They don't understand how much I've gained. So
hey,
I have just been. It's because after the election, honestly, I didn't even election night. I didn't even watch the results come in. I was just so tired, so I came home and I slept. And I said that is what I was gonna do. 7:30, I got home. By 7:45, I was in my bed. My phone was off, and I went to sleep. And it was the sleep of the dead, literally, because for the last 8 months since I was launched in January, this election was just this goal in the distance for me. And I didn't think about anything after the election. It's like everything that I did was leading up to that particular point. So when it was finally over, I slept the sleep of the dead because I felt that it was finished, you know? And come whatever
yes.
may, and I said it repeatedly before, I made peace with
Well,
the outcome.
you're starting to answer the question. So wait, let me give you the question.
Yes.
This is what I did. This is what I missed and what I wanted. That's why you were urged and asked, not forced. It was up to you to come back on the show because you
Yes.
told me you were gonna come back.
Yes, I did.
Yeah,
Yes.
whatever the results. So
Yes.
Tashia, Father God, Father, you know our hearts and you know the minds of each and every one of us. Father, and I bring you in this evening as usual. I don't want to get too much above myself. I know I'm anxious. I know I want to get this show on the road because this is the first of my 90 minutes show as from today. You have started it, Tashia, and I wanted you to be the one to start off my new timing on my shows. So bless the Lord, oh my soul, and all that is within me. Today I want to continue to bless your holy name. Father, into thy hands I commit and commend our spirit, knowing that you are the God of all truth. You are the God that give us life. You are the God that is right there when life, hey, you sir, will be taken away from us. Father, you are the one that owns and control the keys for heaven and for hell. And today, as we speak life, and I speak life unto your daughter, unto your child, Tashia Grace Burris, may your love, dear God, and may your peace transcend within her, around her, for the rest of her life, as today we get to find out whether or not she's going to continue to be a politician. You didn't know that, yeah? Give God praise. Give God
All praise
praise.
and thanks.
Amen.
All praise and thanks. Amen.
So, Tashia, how have you been since the outcome of the general elections were announced?
Right. So the election was held on August 10th, and the results were what they are. And the idea is that I was supposed to go back to work. But what happened is that and this is my first public speaking on this because a lot of persons, I just kind of finished doing my lives that week, but I didn't really speak publicly about, what was going on with me. So I was informed by our local health authorities that I was exposed to someone who tested positive for COVID. And as a result, I had to go into mandatory at home quarantine for 14 days. So I was at home alone. I couldn't have my children with me. I could not be out. I could not go out for 14 days, and I couldn't start back work. So I've been on quarantine since that time. And, that period of quarantine gave me so much opportunity to just reflect on everything that happened during the campaign. And it helped me to be able to break down some of the experiences that I had and, look for, again, the lessons and the blessings in everything that I experienced. And, it was just a time for me to just rest and reflect and plan and basically ask God, okay, what next, God? Because I always said, he was the one who put me in this. He said, you know what, you need to be in this thing. So the thing is now over. I did what you told me to do. What next? So this chance, this time away from the spotlight and time away from people has just given me the opportunity to be able to just rest and reflect on everything that has happened and where I hope to go in the future. So that is what I've been up to.
So, Miss Burris, we have not spoken since you left, since you leave the last time. You and Faith
Yes,
be Israel.
right. Mm-hmm.
I tried to reach you days now and nothing. So what you are saying to me here now is the first time I'm hearing it this evening.
Yeah.
So when you had the mandatory quarantine, were you scared? Were you afraid?
No, I wasn't afraid because I wasn't showing any visible symptoms of COVID. And then I was tested and the tests came back negative. But remember, because of the kind of virus that it is, you can get a negative test, you can be asymptomatic and develop symptoms after you've been tested. So that is why I had to be on this mandatory quarantine period until the end. And if I didn't show any symptoms, then I guess everything is fine. So, I mean, I know that it's a scary time for Tobago. I know that because we are such a small island and we're such a close-knit island, COVID has the potential to really devastate our island. And I mean, funny enough, the Saturday before the election, I was on the platform speaking about the fact that even the persons who hold the highest offices in our land, in our island, could not decide here what we're restricting travel to just essential personnel. We are, closing borders or we're instituting policies to protect our people. They couldn't make those decisions. They have to wait on a minister in a ministry in Trinidad to decide how Tobago can start to protect itself. And, these are some of the issues that we campaigned on. But the election result was what it was. I have moved on from that. My thing is, we are now staring another situation in our face. How are we now equipping ourselves to deal with that? How are we now getting to a place where the persons who are in a position of authority, how are they treating with that? And how are we as a people in Tobago now holding them accountable for the things that they do and the things that they don't do? And those are the things that are of critical importance to me because we're going into another election soon. And I would hope that even if people stayed on the fence in this last election, let's say our message did not resonate with them well enough in this last election, that over the next couple of weeks that people would be looking at what is taking place and asking themselves, are you satisfied with the representation you've been getting? And if you're not, and there are people out there with the expertise who, but for their political affiliation, are not being given the opportunity to even offer their expertise to try and help this situation. If you are satisfied that persons who are in a position to do something about it, are you certain that they are making the best decisions on your behalf in this time? Because Tobago needs its best and its brightest at the forefront of this fight. And if we are letting political affiliation prevent us from putting our best and brightest at the forefront of this fight, we have to seriously ask ourselves, are those the kind of leaders we want in crisis times? So plenty things to think about. Yeah.
That's why I want you back. That's why I want you back. I want you to be the one of the people who will just enlighten people, put them not to sleep again, because I'm telling everybody, Tobago was awakened, and we have to get ready to understand that is forward ever, backward
Backward never.
never.
Yeah.
So well done, Miss Burris. So Tashia, tell us
Mhm.
some new knowledge that you gain when it comes to the Tobago West constituency as a result of your on the ground campaigning. Because you were on the ground. And when I say on the ground,
Right.
you were on house roof, you
Yes.
were on every area. You were on the
Yes,
ground.
yes, yes,
Tell us.
yeah. I think one of the biggest eye openers for me was the huge disparity between the persons who have in Tobago society and those who don't, those who are
Mm,
barely making it. You would think that Tobago West, being one of the more developed areas of Tobago and, the kind of the hub of the businesses and the tourism, that you would not find, I guess, poverty. I was
mm,
appalled at the level of poverty that exists in between spaces where businesses are, where supposed rich people live. I mean, right in these communities where people think, oh, only rich people live there are persons living barely above the poverty line. So for me, that
mm,
was a serious eye opener because it said to me that somehow in this island there is a serious issue with the distribution of resources. There are
mm,
persons who fall outside of that net that the government can assist for whatever reason. Take, for example, in terms of even those roof repairs that we were doing. People are like, oh, let them go apply to settlements and these things. There are grants for that and whatnot. But when you look at the requirements for them to get some of these grants, some people just don't make it. They can't do better for themselves for whatever reason. And because of that, we have this serious gap that is not being addressed because these people really kind of exist on the fringes of society. They are around, but we don't think about them. So even in campaigning, you might see a shack. People living in the shack, but you kind of pass straight because it's like, oh, well, then people probably don't vote or whatever. They don't have electricity, they don't have running water. They probably don't vote. And I think it's this mental idea that people have built in their minds that in Tobago everybody has, or everybody has access to, and that is not true. There's
mm,
a huge part of our population that just doesn't qualify for assistance from the government. And this is where entities like political parties and the church, this is where these organizations can get involved. And for me, I saw that as a place where we now have to start to address some of our social issues at the level of these organizations because you're dealing with. So if there's a criteria, if there's stipulations, then you can't justify giving away taxpayers' money to people who don't qualify because it just won't be fair. But at the same time, you can't leave them undone. So all of these things really were an eye opener to me. That's one. The second thing that I discovered is that we have a serious land issue in Tobago in general, but Tobago West in particular, because you have persons living in Tobago West, and this is part of that, even that whole airport issue with people and their lands and stuff. You have persons who have land, whether it was designated as agricultural land years ago. Tongan Country did not change the designation. Communities sprung up. People built their houses out of pocket. They didn't go to the banks at that time because back then everybody was building their house from susu and these kinds of things.
yes.
So people built their homes. People put down their roots. People passed on their lands down their generation. And the powers that be didn't put the systems in place to now change the designation of these lands from agriculture to mixed use, whether it be residential, commercial, agriculture, whatever as the case might be. So now you have a situation where people have serious issues with title and deed to their property and being able to pass on these lands to persons. And then in terms of valuing these property, they're being told, well, this is agricultural land, but you literally have a built up community there, you have businesses there, you have commercial spaces there. And you can't blame the people for taking the initiative to
That's
develop
right.
themselves if you, the government, didn't create a system for them to be able to know that you want their land, to be able to give them fair market value for their properties. And that is a situation that needs critical attention.
Boy, we're having some problem here. I think Miss Burris, something went wrong with her. So Martin Lindstrom is saying, combined with people not wanting to tell their problems to anyone. Many take pride in not asking anyone for help. Some who do ask are being stigmatized. It is bad. Bad.
I'm back again. Yeah, so
Circle. Yes, as we were saying there, a gentleman just put a question up, and if you could read the question and answer, Mr. Martin
okay.
Lindstrom.
Right. Combined with people not wanting to tell their problems to anyone, many take pride in not asking anyone for help. Some who do ask are being stigmatized. It's a bad, bad circle, and that is correct. Because this Tobago space is so small and everybody knows everybody, and we have a serious problem with professionalism and with ethic, that if you approach someone for assistance and you take all the pride out of your eyes and yourself to do that, that you're not confident that whatever you express to them is going to be held in the utmost confidence, and that's a problem that we have to address, because we can't be in positions where we have to serve people, but people are not assured that
Judge.
they are getting the service that they deserve and the dignity that they deserve in accessing these services. And I would think that us being such a small island, that will be so important for us to maintain confidence and maintain people's dignity, maintain people's respect. But plenty things happened during this campaign that really opened my eyes to the fact that there is a culture of disrespect that does exist, that permeates at the top to the very bottom of society. We have a lot of internal work to do, because we can't grow as a society if it is we're not mature. And a lot of persons are adults, but they're not very mature. And it shows in their behavior, it shows in their actions towards each other, it shows in how we treat each other, it shows in how we deal with conflict, it shows in many different things, and it shows in how we relate to one another, or relationships, the breakdown in society. So politics exists at a very, very high level, but when you break it down and go down to the community, you realize where our problems really do exist.
So let me get this straight. You recognize this quality of life, lifestyle living in many communities. Could you name some of the areas where you see this kind of disparity?
Well, it
You
actually
know?
it occurred across the constituency, so no community is
Wow.
immune. And I, as I said, I was shocked, because look, for example, I went to a family in Riseland, and if you know Riseland and you drive through
Yeah, I do.
Riseland, it's just mansions
Houses,
and big houses
mansions.
and stuff.
Yeah.
So I was shocked.
Big
Yes,
people
so
living there.
right. So when I went there, I was shocked, because
Me
these
too.
people were kind of nestled between two mansions. And in my mind, I'm saying, but you guys have neighbors. Are your neighbors not even in the past? Neighbors used to look out for one another, and it's almost like if people exist in their own
Neighbors,
individual.
neighbors used
So
to neighbors used to look out long ago. Now neighbors looking down on one
yeah,
another.
yes, yes,
Yes.
yes,
Instead
yes,
of
yes.
looking out
Very,
for you,
very
they're
true.
looking down on you.
Very,
Literally, because
very, very
you down
true.
there in a little galvanized stuff, and
Hmm.
them up there on 2, 3 stories high,
Yep.
with long steps, big light, big gate, electronic
Yes,
gate.
that is true.
How many cars in
That
the
is
yard?
very true.
How many cars
That
in the
is
yard
very
parking
true.
up?
Hmm. That is true. That is very true. So
So
to
how would that
me,
make
I
you
think
feel? How would that make you feel?
I feel like if we've lost the love that I grew up seeing, because I could remember growing up in Fort Street in Scarborough, and there was a little shop on the hill. And anytime, my parents, they were young, they had all of us young. So it was a number of, it was like six of us, but let's say the first four were like ducklings, one after the other. So the first four of us are pretty close. It's like 2 years between us. And I could distinctly remember times that my mother would say, go up the road by the shop and trust some sugar. And mommy will give me a bag and I'll go up the road and call the shopkeeper and trust some sugar until she get money. And that was
Yeah.
normal. That was normalized behavior for me. I don't know any shopkeeper who does trust anybody these days. I'll be hard pressed to find anybody who does anything like that, right? So that we don't really have that Tobago love that we had in the past. And it's one of the things that I really was kind of trying to let people know that in order for us to survive, in order for us to thrive, in order for us to progress, we have to bring back the things that made us um, who we are, which is that Tobago love, that Lenhan concept, that Susu concept where you're going and you're helping build a man house, you're casting a foundation, you're seeing him rise, because him rising means that you're gonna get help when it's your chance for you to get that assistance, so that everybody was assured that they would get that outstretched hand. They would get that help when they needed it. It's like a dog eat dog world. It's like you pick a side and you see where you can get what you can get, and to hell with the rest. And we will not survive divided. As an island, we are too small to be divided. And this campaign really opened my eyes as to how much we choose to be divided, especially along political lines. And it actually disappointed me a whole lot, because I don't see politics as the thing that should divide us, because we all have similar history. We came from the same place. We have the same backgrounds. We, um, you know, if we went through all this struggle together as an island, why should one color over another be the reason why we spew hate? And in this campaign, I saw a lot of hate, and for no reason other than somebody pick one color over an next. And I asked myself, what happened to freedom of choice? What happened to democracy? What happened to people just simply saying, I prefer to associate with one group of people over another, or my values align with one group of people over another? We ran a campaign on issues. We ran a campaign on enlightening people. We ran a campaign on educating people. But what was put in the media was bacchanal. What was put in the
Hey, you
media
saw.
was worthlessness and commerce. And that was not what we campaigned on, because we see now that if Tobago was doing well, if Tobago was thriving, there would be no opposition. There would be no need for an opposition, because it would
Hey.
mean that the person who's there is doing the best job, and they're not. And you can't be upset if somebody decides, look, I see what you can give. I recognize that you can't do any better than what you've been doing. So I've decided to put myself forward because I think I can do a better job. And that's the simple fact of the matter. And they took this campaign below the gutter. They did, not us. They
Hey.
did that. So that young people looking on, they would be disappointed, because in their mind, if they have to weigh one side versus the next, one side was heavy on the education, another side was heavy on the nonsense.
Hey.
And if anybody has to be on the outside looking in, anybody who chooses to associate with slander and vitriol and commerce and bacchanal, they'll get what they're looking for. But for me, I know I made the right choice. Nobody could tell me that I didn't make the right choice. And I'm glad that I did that, because I'm pretty certain, I'm willing to bet this pretty little head of mine, that if I had chosen them, I would have been the best thing out. Yeah?
Yeah.
So
But because you
I
didn't
cool.
choose
I
them,
cool. Trust me,
they
I
want to
cool.
devalue. So when
Exactly.
you saying the word bacchanal,
Mm.
when you look back, and see that your rival, I'm using it because it was war. People believe it was just a campaign. It was
No, it was
open
war.
warfare.
Yeah.
And when you hear a young woman could go on the air and said, take the roof and run them. Isn't that a form of stealing and robbery with
Well,
verbal violence?
let me tell you something. I am a mother. I have two beautiful children. My son wrote CXC while I was on the campaign, so I couldn't even be there for him in the way that I wanted to, but because I have such a strong support system, and because his mommy is a fighter, he's a fighter too. So he is very resilient, and he was actually giving me so much encouragement during the process. I would never teach my children that.
Hey.
Never teach my children to be ungrateful. So that
Hey.
the only person who can say something like that is obviously somebody who never had to teach anybody anything.
Ooh.
Because ungratefulness is worse than witchcraft. And that is the truth. That is the truth. And I say that, I don't pull any punches to say that. Because I have been a facilitator, I've been a peer educator for the Tobago Youth Council. I've mentored hundreds of young people. And I would never tell them to be ungrateful to anybody who has given them a hand up, a leg up in this life. Because when you empower people, they can empower others. The roof that we fix today could belong to someone who goes to study. And when they study, they come back and fix 10,000 roofs. And that is how you empower people. You show them that I can help you and I don't want to look back for anything because I see that you need assistance. But that feeling of knowing that somebody is looking out for you is sometimes the motivation that somebody needs to go and help somebody else in need. And that's how the community benefits. But when you practice ungratefulness, only one person benefits. Only one person benefits. Yeah? So when you take the roof and run, only your roof getting fixed. But when you decide a good was done to me, so I'm going to pay it forward. And it might be in the form of a roof. It might be in the form of, I see a family who's in need of some groceries, or I see somebody who needs some mentorship. They need a listening ear. Or there's this child that needs some help to do homework. Or there's this other person needs a tablet or a laptop or something like that. Your deeds could be paid forward in many different ways.
Yes.
So that when kindness is done unto you, and the Bible talks about that, when kindness is done unto you, you do a disservice to God by letting the kindness stay with you. You glorify God's name when you carry on that kindness because it's like a ripple. It's a pebble in a lake. The ripples. And that is how society benefits. It starts with one candle lighting a flame. So I don't really want to talk much about people who don't seem to know a lot about kindness. And it shows,
Wow. Awesome answer, because at least it's more than one thing that really bounced me real hard for the election. And that one is with your form of campaigning and how people being told, as if, all I want is my roof fixed.
Yeah.
Do it. That is where you guys good for. Take it and run. Don't support them. Now, we have another question there. A lot of people writing up statements. A lot of people wishing you the best. A lot of people understanding where you're going. And your answers so far, they are perfect. I really doesn't give perfect scores, but I'm giving you some scores here tonight.
Oh gosh, thank you.
Perfectly said. And I know that this election created bruises, but it didn't create wounds. That is what I'm glad for. You might be bruised, but you're not wounded. And I know a little balm will help the bruise. And I know you can, as they want you guys to do, lick your wounds and move on. That's what we hear all the time. Yes. We don't, you're not here to lick wound. You're here to find out, why was I wounded? Why was I wounded? Because that's what we do for every election. Every election done, we're moving on. Moving on to what? And when the next election comes, the same conduct, the same behavior, and we get in the same results. You can't get change if you keep doing things the same way over and over.
Yeah.
So let's get to our other question.
Yeah.
Is that the same question? Some new knowledge that you gain when it comes to Tobago West.
That was the last question.
That was the last question. Do you have anything else to add on to that question?
Or you could probably get some questions from the live audience. Oh.
Tashia, what were the 3 biggest lessons that you will take away from your campaigning?
The first lesson is never forget your why. I was told that the night that I was launched, a friend of mine sent it to me, never forget your why.
Oh, your why.
Never forget why you're in it. Because in the process of the campaign and the lights and the cameras and the action, you can get carried away. It's easy because I'll tell you this, I mean, I never had any experience being on a platform, being in front of crowds like that, being in the frenzy of a campaign. I mean, I had to look at myself on billboards every time I drove down the highway, and that was surreal for me. And if you're not grounded in who you are, you could get carried away with the vanity that comes with being in the spotlight and becoming a public figure, you know? So ensuring that I always remembered why I was in this thing was the thing that kept me grounded. And it would be advice that I give anybody who's walking into politics, right? I'm not telling you what your why should be, you know, although your why should really be to serve people, because some people's why are to make money. Some people's why are to get power and get authority over people. And if you're in it for that, God will deal with you.
Amen.
But if you're in it for service to the people, never forget that is the reason why you walked into it. Because some people start off like that and they lose their way, you know. So that's the first lesson I would say. The second lesson that I learned is change doesn't happen overnight. You would think that after 20 years of people getting what they have been getting, right? That I wouldn't have to appear to tell people you deserve better. That people would understand that they deserve better. But for me, I recognize now that the value I place on myself because of what I have been through, another person is not yet at that point. So that I have to be patient. I have to be patient in whatever it is I'm doing, whether it be talking, learning, listening, demonstrating, because somebody may understand you the first time you speak. Someone may have to hear the same thing repeated 12 and 13 times before they even begin to understand where you're coming from. So that politics is not, or getting into service, because I don't like to say politics. To me, politics is the bacchanal of the thing. Getting into serving people is not an overnight process. You don't get in today and tomorrow everybody is perfect. You did your job. You are so save a lot. You're so fix a lot. It doesn't happen like that. That change is a process. There are some people who are ready. There were some people who were simply waiting for someone to be worthy of leading them into the change. And there are some people who have to see actions happen before they can change. And there are some people who literally, you'll have to drag them kicking and screaming over to the change. So that if you're not patient, if you're not able to deal with people at different levels, if you're not able to switch up your language and switch up your methods in terms of dealing with people, you will get frustrated as the person trying to serve. You will get frustrated. You will get despondent. You will be disappointed in people. You won't understand where they're coming from, because you have to recognize that where you stand, you are trying to show them where you're at. But if you remember your own struggle and you knew it wasn't easy, and I know my struggle wasn't easy, then I don't expect anybody to change overnight. So that people come in with this concept that, yeah, I can go in there and people go vote for me and I can change everything. It don't happen like that. change is a process. And if you don't have
Process.
patience, left serving people alone. If you don't have patience, do not get involved in this. Yeah. The
Amen.
third lesson that I learned, and I think maybe it's probably the most important lesson, is ensure that you have a support system. If I didn't have my parents, if I didn't have my father in particular, and I have to say that my father has been, I mean, growing up, fathers and daughters, we had a great relationship growing up. And then during my teenage years, things came a little bit rocky. And then, but you see, this campaign is the thing that gelled my father's and I relationship in such
Hey.
a real way, because now I think in his eyes, I have grown up. I think before this campaign, I was always his little girl. So he felt that he always had to protect me. He felt that he always had to be, this kind of larger than life figure in my life. But during this campaign, my father really became my friend. My father became my confidant. My father became my rock and my biggest supporter. And, without him, without my mom, because my mom took care of my children while I was campaigning, my
Yeah.
mother she just went into granny mommy mode, and she was like, Tash, I'll just watch those kids and whatever. And she just did behind the scenes, because she wasn't really up and up in the meetings and stuff like that. But I knew that I didn't have to worry about what was going on with my children, because my mother just simply did that for me. And I could never stop thanking and being thankful for the kind of parents I had. My father campaigned for me. My father went in places I could not physically go into. My father is, I can't even begin to this. My father's been
Hey,
campaigning for
Father.
me since last year, so he just did so much work. He did immense work. He paid money out of his pocket. He took people canvassing. He bought water. He truck up and down the place. I couldn't pay him for that. And it was because he simply believed in me.
Yes.
And in spite of what happened, his first words to me was, Tash, I don't know what you want to do going forward, but whatever you decide, me and your mom, we are behind you 100%. Don't worry about that. And that gave
Wow.
me so much peace, because my days used to be long. I used to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to get ready to go on radio for 7. And then most days I would not get home before midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, because it's the entire day radio,
Mm.
interviews, canvassing in the evening, meeting in the night. And
Go
then
up on the
depending on where
roof.
the meeting was, go up, and then meeting. And then if the meeting in country, to drive home. So I get in home 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning. And the peace that I felt knowing that I didn't have to worry about even my own children, that they were watched, they were taken care of, that my mom did homework with my daughter. She was there with my son when he had to study for CXC. I just didn't have that worry, that burden of having to worry. So that if you're gonna get involved in serving people, it's gonna take you away from your family. But your family at the end of the day is what remains. Because that night, when the results came in and it was what it was, my family was with me. My mom was with me. My dad was with me. A few
Mm.
key people were still milling around, but my family was with me. So that tells you that even when the lights go off, when the billboards come down, when the adverts are no longer on radio, when your face is no longer out there, that your family is what remains. And I'm so happy and I'm so proud that I was able, I think, to represent in the way that I did, because I know I made my father proud. The last meeting we had, which was the Saturday night before the election, and I literally left it all on stage with my last speech. I walked, my father was standing across the road, and there's a part during the speech
Oh, God,
where my
Jesus.
voice broke, and it was like people thought that I was gonna break down on stage. But somehow I have this mechanism that prevents me from crying in public. So, but I recognized my voice broke, but my mom was watching online. And my dad told me that when I came across the road to talk to him, he's like, you know, your mother called me when you was on stage and she said, oh gosh, Gary, she go in and cry, go by the stage, let's just see her. And she's like, P, she's all right. Don't worry.
Ah, praise God.
You know, so when I
Yes.
went to talk to my dad, he was like, you know, your mother was worried about you. But he's like, but she don't know that was strong for you know? So my
Yes.
parents were just, I mean, I think I have the best relationship with them now. I mean, I think they understand me fully now. I understand them. We all have had our different journeys to where we're at in this life. But I think during this campaign, I grew up in their eyes, you
Yes.
know. So yes, I would still be their little girl, but they're seeing the woman that I
The
became. They're
woman now.
seeing the
Yes.
lioness.
The
Yes.
thing that I was
So
now about to say the
yes.
lioness. Well, we have another question and we're going into 47 minutes. Tashia, how did you explain the election outcome to your children?